to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thanks to all you listeners for joining us for another episode. We're really excited today, Jenna. We're here to talk about plants, specifically flowers, tulips. I'm really excited to learn a lot about it.
Spring plants.
Springtime.
The most beautiful time of year around the zoo, in my opinion, is when all of the tulips are here. But I know there's so much more to appreciate, and you guys do a ton of other things. But the tulips are so obviously beautiful with their bright colors.
Definitely. Here to talk to us about it today and teach us a little bit. We're being joined by two of our horticulturists, Paul Tosh and Tosh. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and joining us. We know you're busy this time of year. Springtime's in session, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So we always start off our episodes just kind of learning a little bit about our guests. So we'll do ladies first. Tosh, do you want to tell us about how you got started or interested in plants or this job or the zoo in general?
Yeah. So I'm actually not from around here.
Okay.
So I grew up in Michigan and studied out in Arizona. So I moved here about 10 years ago. I actually studied conservation biology at Arizona State. And horticulture was kind of a lateral move for me. And coming here, I loved everything that the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden was doing as far as plants and sustainability. And, just really wanted to be here. And I felt like it really was in line with my values as far as where I wanted to sort of set my career path. So I've been with the horticulture department for about 10 years, started as a seasonal, and got hired on a few years later. And I primarily work with our display gardens. I do a little bit to help out with our nurseries as well. But I also manage our horticulture volunteer program.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. We have a great core group of horticulture volunteers.
I'm sure you guys need a lot of help.
Yeah.
There's so much to do.
Yeah, there's about 125 people that are involved in our volunteer programs. And we have a lot of different areas where they volunteer in, but a lot of them, I'd say probably 75% are volunteering in the gardens.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of great help from our volunteers.
So this isn't really related to what we're talking about today, but you just said something that I didn't know about, and you did conservation biology. What were you leaning towards when you went for that degree? Like, what were you thinking of? Were you always thinking of plants, or what were you?
Yeah, so when I started my college education, I actually started at in the sustainability program at Arizona State. And it was I'd say it was a really good program, especially during that time. I wouldn't say it was like the first program because there have been lots of variations of sustainability programs out there. But I did feel when I was studying it that it was still a relatively new concept. And as far as like jobs and things like that, I really wanted something to fall back on. And I mean, biology, that's bread and butter for so many people. Mm-hmm. And I really loved conservation biology. I had been working for a conservation corps previously and had done some work with AmeriCorps and just loved working outside and wanted to continue that. And then when I was doing that, I found myself really drawn to plants. And I ended up interning with the Forest Service, growing plants for the endangered Karner blue butterfly up in Michigan.
Very cool.
So it was a lot of fun, and just to have that kind of direct impact to help species was really important to me. And so my experience and my internships through my education led me down this road toward horticulture.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you mentioned it's kind of a new thing. Like, I didn't know much about sustainability until I started working here, and I feel like it's grown even in the last, 5 years. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm more aware of it and more aware of the options and the things that can be done, and I didn't know about it really 10 years ago. Yeah,
it's definitely come to the forefront of a lot of people's minds and a lot of companies, really, and organizations. They are now incorporating those concepts into everyday practices, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like you said, Tosh, 10 years ago maybe, there weren't many opportunity for employment out there. There weren't many paid positions that were offering that kind of stuff. So it was great that you had a fallback idea, even though those opportunities have grown and they're more common now. you had to
Yeah.
fall back in horticulture, which worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I've loved the journey to get here.
So what brought you to Cincinnati? Did you come here straight from Arizona State?
Yeah, so I was graduating, and my husband, who we weren't married yet, but he is from this area, and so that's how I ended up here, and we got married, and now here we are,
The rest is
still
history.
here.
And Paul, what's your story? How did you get into horticulture?
I took the long and winding road.
Okay.
Out of high school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I bounced around and did various things, and eventually I moved. I'm actually from northern Indiana, not too far from Michigan there. And I met my now wife in South Bend. We actually were both working backstage on a production of West Side Story.
No way.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And when she graduated, she got a job in Indianapolis. I moved there with her, took various jobs, and got into one with a landscaping company there, and thought, well, this is cool working with plants, except I didn't really want to work watering petunias in parking lots and business park mediums all day. So I kind of checked out my options and got into the public horticulture program at Purdue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so went through that, got a job in Indianapolis at the then Museum of Art, now Newfields, and worked there for 6 years and loved it. We then came here because my wife's job changed, and horticulture, well, insurance pays better than horticulture. So we moved to Cincinnati, and I worked various jobs here and have been here at the zoo for a little over 6 years now.
Wow, I didn't
Awesome.
realize you had been here this long. Sometimes we
know.
get stuck in our little bubbles, and I feel like the last 3 years we all really just stayed in our own areas and didn't get out as much because
Yeah.
of COVID, but I had no idea you had been here that long.
It's been a while, yeah.
So do you have a specialty around here?
I do. I work in the plant records, so any of the labeling of the plants that you see out in the park, that's on me
Okay.
to have it correct and looking good, or to even be there, because sometimes we'll be walking around and go, oh shoot, that's blooming and there's no label. Who knows what that is? I should know what that is, so I need to get a label out there.
I feel like that's got to be an impossible task, keeping up on all that, right? Because there are so many blooms throughout the zoo. I mean, it takes a quick walk to see how many flowers there are. Scientific names, how do you keep all that straight? That's got to be a huge task.
It's hard. We have a few racks or drawers full of labels, and when we see it needs to go out, we'll go and check through there. If it's not in that, then we have a plant records database. We refer to that if I can't remember what the plant name is, which sometimes happens. And so we'll check that, run a tag off through the printer, and get it out there.
Paul, how dare you not remember thousands of plant scientific names? How could you?
Some days are easier than others.
I'm surprised you don't put when you plant the plant, you don't put the name tag right then and there. That's a lot to remember to go back and find them. And
It is. So when we plant it, we try to keep track of it. We should keep track of it. There should be a list of things that are planted. We also try to get a drawing made of it so we can have that to reference
okay, that seems
later as
helpful.
well. All these things we can go back and kind of check ourselves. Sometimes, too, we'll leave a tag in the ground, like on either end of a bed of something that's all the same. So we can kind of cheat a little bit that way. But most of the time, it's about remembering.
Wow, that sounds tough. And then, so we're going to talk about all of the tulips that you plant, but I'm curious if when you are changing out the beds and making a new display, does it break your heart to pull out certain plants and then plant something new? Is that difficult for you, or what do you end up doing with those plants?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that it necessarily breaks our heart, because usually by the time we're turning plants over, they're pretty much done.
Okay.
So our display areas, during the summer, they'll have annuals and tropicals. The tropicals we overwinter in greenhouses, but the annuals, they live their whole life cycle in one season. So usually when they're getting pulled out in October, they're pretty tired.
Okay.
And then the fresh new tulip bulbs go in, and they kind of just bide their time through the winter until they come up in March and April. And usually when we're digging the bulbs out in May, because they will have bloomed and are kind of heading toward dormancy, usually at that point they look pretty sad as well, so you're ready to kind of change things out.
That makes sense.
Put something fresh in the ground, yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you plant the bulbs in the fall.
Yes.
So do you have anything out in place where the bulbs are planted? Can you plant stuff on top of it? Because it doesn't ever seem like the displays are empty. Does that make sense? Where all of the tulips are planted.
Yeah, so during the winter, what you'll probably see, or what might look empty, would be our dormant tulips.
Okay.
So they're kind of biding their time, waiting to send out their energy and create this awesome tulip bloom. And it looks pretty barren at that point.
Well, see, that's what I was thinking. I feel like it doesn't usually look barren.
I never noticed
feel
it
like
either.
you guys-
I think you need to get out more.
Maybe I do, yes.
But maybe, a good point to that is that we have so many other plants in our landscape. So you might not be looking directly at the first 5 feet of the bed. You might be looking at the shrubs that are behind it, or the trees behind it. And we have lots of winter interest plants here, so it's very possible that it's going unnoticed, that it seems like this little bit of space has not got something in it, but it really does. And then the rest of the year, it's really blooming its little heart out.
And you might be really distracted in winter by all the lights from Festival
That's
of Lights.
true. Yes. Yeah, I guess if it is like October and then it's getting colder, and if I don't leave the area as often, but I think it's just props to you guys. I think you make everything look beautiful all the time. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. But what is that, speaking of like planting the bulbs, what does that process kind of look like? Like, how many bulbs are you planting? Who is doing this work? Like, that's got to be just a massive undertaking, right?
Yeah. So for tulips, we do tulips and hyacinths, but then we also do a bunch of minor bulbs as well. And so for tulips and hyacinths, we plant around 100,000 every year.
that's incredible.
Yeah. So it's a daunting number.
Wow.
So typically it's about I'd say 40 varieties of tulip bulbs and about a dozen varieties of hyacinth bulbs. And we do it all typically during 1 month. Usually it's late October to sort of late November. And our horticulture volunteers help us with that. And then we do it also with corporate volunteers as well. So people who are coming in for one day, and it might be a group of 20, and we knock out 10,000 bulbs in a go. And so typically, sort of when we're doing the actual planting, we'll have 2 groups moving in tandem. One group will be working with this corporate volunteer group, and another group will work with our horticulture volunteers, and that allows us to basically get twice as much done while the weather's good, because that time of year you're really, the rains can come in and kind of knock a week out for you, so we try and get everything done as quickly and efficiently as possible.
That seems tough, and I'm always blown away. How can you tell with a bulb what color or what variation that you're planting? And how do you decide your displays? Like, to have the red here and the orange, like, they're always so gorgeous. How do you do that, and how can you tell what you're planting?
Yeah. So as far as the designing process, so we typically build our maps we build maps. We look at a bed and we say we want these varieties in here and draw the shapes in and things like that. And typically what we'll do is observe what comes up during April and look and see how those bulbs have performed. So that would be the bulbs we ordered the previous year. And then we use that information to inform our design process. And so usually our designs are made in, between April and June.
Do you enjoy that process? Is it fun for you?
It really is.
Okay,
yeah,
I think
because
it'd be fun.
you're really busy with other things because annuals are going in, but at the same time you're like, oh, we just did this, and look at all these great varieties that are out there. And so as far as what we choose to put where, we try to use bulbs that are going to come up within a window of time, or that they're going to bloom within a certain window. And usually those are mid-season bulbs. And the reason for that is we want a lot of bloom at one time, or over the course of a month, we'll say. And then we want to be able to take those bulbs out very quickly and get annuals in within a month, so that they're established by July and ready to go for the rest of the year. So we typically use mid-season bulbs. We will use some earlier things. We'll also use some later things to kind of stretch that for more of a month as opposed to a week or two. And then we choose a lot of varieties because it could be a bad year for one variety. Maybe that variety gets a disease or something, and you want to sort of mitigate that risk. We want a lot of blooms out there, and if you have 5 varieties of red tulips and one isn't so great, you still have thousands and thousands and thousands of tulips that are awesome. As far as sort of the design part of it, when we think about colors and heights and things like that, we try and put like heights together, or something that's going to be 18 to 22 inches in back of something that might be a 12-inch variety. And as we plant things and as we use things, we get a pretty firm handle of how those perform in our landscape. Just because it's 20 inches in the Netherlands doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be 20 inches for us.
Okay.
So there can be some variation there. And so sometimes, when you're looking at a bed of tulips and you see something that's really short, that's part of that variation, where the assumption was that it would be this based on the information we're given.
Okay.
But, it doesn't always work out like that in nature. And then we also try to gauge the feel of an area. When you're walking into the zoo, we want things to be energetic. We want to use warm colors, welcoming colors. Other areas where maybe it's a little calmer, we'll use more pastel colors to kind of bring that tone down and reinforce that, okay, this is kind of a quiet area, that kind of thing.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And then we try and get colors and things that will complement each other, flower shapes that will complement each other. We try and incorporate not only the tulips versus the hyacinths, but also, when we're getting tulips, we have a few double varieties. We have a few lily varieties, fringe varieties, so that there's a little bit of diversity in what you're seeing in the landscape.
That makes a lot of sense how you kind of mentioned you get different varieties to kind of like diversify your portfolio, so to speak, so that you've got something growing. That was one question I had. I don't even know if you're able to track it, but like, say you plant 10 tulips. Do you expect all 10 to grow and bloom, or is 80% a success? Is 50% a success? I'm sure it's hard to even track that.
So we plant first-year tulips. So the hope is that every single tulip will come up and bloom. And typically that mostly happens unless there's a disease issue or damage in transit or something like that. As tulips go from year to year, they do lose a little bit of their vigor. There are some things you can kind of do to help that along. Some people maybe even fertilize in second and third year plantings, but tulips, unlike some of the minor bulbs that will expand year after year and produce more of themselves across areas and bloom more, tulips can kind of go the other way.
Oh, I was wondering, you've mentioned minor bulbs, but I wasn't sure. Can you guys tell us what those are, or...
Sure. Well, first off, I'm going to, and I think listeners will hopefully agree, minor bulbs, that's a bit of a misnomer. I think they're termed minor because they're not quite as showy as tulips in their first year. but they can still play a major role in the landscape.
It's true.
It's really just about anything that's not tulips or hyacinths, and some would say even daffodils are quote unquote major, but crocus, snowdrops, scillas, glory of the snow. There are a lot of iris. Those are some of the things people would consider minor bulbs.
Okay.
They tend to be shorter and smaller, so maybe that has something to do with it too. But there are still some kind of big ones. There's some alliums which aren't necessarily spring bloomers, but that have a huge inflorescence. That's the group of flowers. They might be as big as a foot, not a foot, 9 inches across. Allium Christophii and Allium schubertii, very showy, big inflorescences. Not at all what I would consider minor, but
No, I was
Right.
thinking
again,
the same thing. Yeah.
some people would call those minor.
But they might spread, or they'll continue growing better as years go on?
Some do and some don't. It
Okay.
depends again on there's such a huge diversity again of types of minor bulbs. Some are very adapted here around here, and they will spread. They'll self-sow, or they might produce by offsets. A lot of the daffodils do that.
What does that mean, produced by offsets?
So even actually the tulips will do this too, or can. The bulb, after it blooms, as it goes dormant, before it goes dormant, the leaves are there providing nutrients to the bulb, and the bulb can either simply set a flower for next year, or if it's got enough resources available to it, it can make another little bulb off to the side.
Okay.
So you can take that, if you were to dig that up, you could take that offset, and now you've got two identical plants. So again, daffodils are really good at this. They refer to daffodils as having noses, and usually a top-sized daffodil has several noses, and that's just offsets on the bulb.
Okay.
It's like self-propagating almost.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. And others like, again, the winter aconites. Winter aconites and snowdrops can produce a fair amount of seed depending on which one you're looking at. So you might get a lot of seedlings from those.
Okay. And are you guys planting these around the zoo as well?
We are.
And at the same time as the tulips?
Roughly. The tulips take priority, so they'll all get done, and then we'll get into the minors and get those into the ground. That happens, Thanksgiving on, until the ground is frozen.
Okay.
It's game on, if it's nice enough outside to do that.
And part of that, too, is because our minors are typically planted in more naturalized areas where they'll be planted between perennials and shrubs or things like that. And so when you've got a big open area of tilled ground where the tulips are going to go, you really want to get those in right away and just knock it out. And also based on the sheer number.
Yeah.
Whereas with minors, you can do some today, some tomorrow, here, there, that
Okay.
kind of thing. At least with how we use them.
Exactly, because again, as Tosh mentioned, we're not going into tilled ground with these. We're tucking them in between perennials, so it's not a nice soft dig like the tulips.
Okay.
We're poking these in between perennials or under shrubs, anywhere that when they come up, it'll be kind of bare. They can do their thing. The shrubs will leaf out, or in some cases, the perennials might come up. And if we're lucky, I've been trying to do this. I messed up once. I put in an allium, the wrong allium, with a perennial, and the perennial overwhelmed the allium while the allium was blooming. It was supposed to be the taller one, and I forgot which one was which. I mix up Schubertii and Christophii all the time. Christophii gets taller, Schubertii gets wider.
Wow, I can't even pronounce them, so I don't know how you can remember all the different ones and how they grow. But
That's really interesting, though. Clearly, I'm ignorant about all of this, but it's really interesting to me, the plants that you kind of call, the quote-unquote minors, and the way they kind of, tend to, in our zoo, the way you plant them, they kind of blend into the landscape, it sounds like. I always just took those as, those were growing just naturally because they were just propagating throughout the park. I didn't realize that you guys were actually going in between the shrubs and going in between the trees and planting them yourselves. It gives me a whole other appreciation for it.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, they aren't just like a bed of them. So it's like, oh, that's cute. Like, there's like daffodils by that tree, and it's just like a little pop of color or something. And we didn't realize that it's all thought out.
That was the intent.
That's awesome. So for someone like us that knows nothing, but we know that you dig up all these bulbs after the season in May, like you said, and sometimes we sell them for, like, the guests can get a whole bag full for like $5 or $10. I forget what it is. What should we do with those after we take the bag of tulip bulbs home or hyacinth bulbs home?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things you can do. Probably the one that I would recommend would be to put them in a cool, sort of dark area and let them just stay there through the summer until you bring them out in the fall. You'll want to, typically when we load up the bags and things like that, they have the long stalk on them. It's really brown. Let that continue to stay like that, because that energy will go back into that bulb and help it to have a bloom the next year.
That's what I did with mine.
Yeah, so leaving those on all summer, that's fine. And then in the fall, cutting that stalk off and then planting them at that point.
What happens if somebody forgets to do all of that in the fall? Can I plant mine now, or would that be too late?
It would probably be too late to get a bloom this year, but I mean, people do leave tulips in the ground, and you can do that. They can get eaten by other wildlife, so it's a gamble. They can also, if it's a really wet year, they can, rot and ultimately disappear. But I'd say planting them kind of now and through the spring is definitely more of a gamble. People can do it. But you do run the risk of losing them.
Okay, so you recommend fall for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something that I wanted to ask about when it comes to like the tulips throughout this, not just the tulips, but all your flowers throughout the zoo. I'm sure if you've ever been to the zoo, for all of our guests listening at home, squirrels around here are insane. They are wild. How much of a plague are squirrels on your process?
They can be real stinkers, to put it nicely. So we actually, after we have planted the beds, we will net all of our tulip beds. And so kind of backing up, our process is to pull out the annuals, till the beds, lay out all the bulbs in the design we have, and then plant those, grade the soil, and cover them with netting.
Oh, yeah.
And we cover them with this netting because the squirrels are such stinkers and they will immediately start digging up tulip bulbs. And the netting helps to protect them somewhat, but the squirrels will chew through the netting. They will crawl under it. And part of it, too, depends on timing. We tend to see more of that kind of activity like right before we get a couple of cold spells, and then it sort of simmers down a little bit. We also notice a lot more activity in areas where there might be nests. So, looking at a bed this year, it was pretty severely hit by squirrels. And then you look up and there are close to 15 squirrel nests.
Oh my gosh.
Visible.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you just have to take it as it comes and realize that this is going to be a problem. And some of the things that we can do, aside from the netting, and sometimes we'll, add an extra layer and just sort of double protect in certain spots where they've chewed through or something. But some of the things that, we can do is sort of fix it in the spring. So if it's a big area that's really prominent where maybe the squirrels have done a lot of damage, we can come in with some sort of a spring blooming plant and put that in instead, if it kind of works out. Sometimes it's just a matter of saying, yep, we have squirrels, and that's just the way it works. They like bulbs, we like bulbs.
They also like pretzels and cheese, so maybe they should just stick to that until they bloom. Do you remove the netting, like right before they're about to bloom, or how do you decide the timing for that?
So typically when the tulips are up a couple inches, they've just sort of peeked out of the ground a little bit, we'll start removing the netting. So
so you don't have to do it before they peek out of the ground. I would have guessed that.
No, it's actually, you can, but for us, we like to keep it on as long as possible. Because we also, not only do squirrels and other kind of small mammals like the bulbs, they also, some of them like the foliage.
That makes sense.
And will eat that as well. And so, keeping as much protection as long as possible is really helpful for us. But usually, once they're up a couple inches, you need to get that netting off, or it will start to damage the tulip when you pull it off, or it will pull the bulb out completely, which is not what you want.
Right.
Yeah. So we actually just pulled up all the netting about a week ago, and it looks great. I mean, they're coming up. They're about 3 or 4 inches tall right now.
Do you guys have estimates? I know we always try and tell people when we think the peak week or 2 weeks to see the blooms will be. Do you guys want to guess on that?
I mean, it's always hard to make a guess. It's like predicting the weather,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is influenced
because
by
of the weather. Yes.
Yeah. But it could be a little earlier this year. But I would say if you're coming in early to mid-April, you're going to see a lot of blooms. And not just tulip blooms. You're going to have the opportunity to see a lot of blooming trees and shrubs and a variety of perennials as well.
That's good to know. I think it seems like Tunes and Blooms, which is a free event. You can come to the zoo and see the blooms, and we usually have bands that are playing. The last few years, I feel like the weather has not been great for them, and it does seem like, I could be completely wrong. I obviously don't get out enough. But it seems like in the past 5 years or so, the tulips have been blooming sooner. Is that correct? Do you feel that? Is it because, I'm just wondering if, climate change and just weather and everything is affecting this as much as it seems, or is it just, the bad weather is making me think, Tunes and Blooms was canceled again, or,
We don't keep hard and fast records on that, so I don't know that we could give a very solid answer.
Okay.
I mean, and part of it, too, is influenced by the tulips that we have.
Okay.
Some tulips will come a little bit later in that mid-season window. Some will come a little earlier. And so depending on sort of the ratios of that, you could see things happen a little sooner.
So it's maybe not as weather dependent as my brain.
It can be, it can be. But there's other factors that influence it, which is why it's hard for us to kind of say, it's going to be now, because this other thing is blooming, and that always blooms 3 weeks before they, it's hard to say that because, we don't always get the same varieties every year.
Right.
Yeah.
And when they do finally bloom, how long does it last for a single plant? Or I know you said, you guys kind of try and spread out your variety so there's something blooming throughout the whole month, but how long is each flower blooming for?
I mean, I would say that each flower probably blooms for about a week, 2 weeks.
A week, okay.
Yeah, ideally. I mean, we always hope, in a way, we're looking forward to the warmer weather for spring, but when the flowers are open, if it stays a little on the cool side, the flowers will last longer.
Yeah.
If we go through a few consecutive days where it's really warm, 60 plus, then it all happens very quickly.
Okay.
So
that's a very good point.
We want to strike that balance. Not that we exactly have a choice about
Right.
the matter, but in an ideal world, those cool nights of spring are ideal for sustaining the bloom period.
That makes sense.
And also, sometimes we'll get some of those late frosts. Or late snows even, and that definitely slows them down. And the blooms bounce back pretty well. Sometimes they're a little ruffled.
Roughed up.
Yeah, roughed up. But ultimately, they bounce back and still are great color in the landscape. But yeah, it can definitely change the timing, and it can also change the duration of that bloom. Yeah.
That's interesting that the flowers are able to withstand that, though. That was something I was curious about too. Is it's not uncommon around here to get a late frost as early as early April sometimes even. And I was I wondered if that killed off the bulbs or they just truck right through it, huh?
Yeah, no, they're happy as clams. Happy as tulips.
So, how do you know when you get it, and where are you getting your bulbs from? When they come in their first year, how do you know what variety they'll be? I mean, you can't look at a bulb and know what color and variety it is, right? Or
That makes it a little bit of a challenge when we're moving crates of bulbs around, and if we spill any, we have to assume, unless we know, okay, I just dropped this and it came from this crate, this bulb. If you accidentally drop a bulb into another crate, sometimes you don't know that is there.
Yeah.
So you get some mix-ups.
But they just kind of come in a crate that's labeled.
Yes.
And how do those people who are labeling them know?
So it's when they essentially harvest them from the fields
Okay.
in the Netherlands. And so there can be errors where you think you're getting one thing and it might be something else, and a lot of times if that happens, it's a similar color or a similar hue. So like maybe it's a bright yellow tulip that ends up being pale yellow.
Okay.
Well, that's a completely different variety than what you were expecting.
Yeah.
But, when you're out in the field harvesting them, it could have gotten mixed in with something else. But yeah, they come labeled in their crates. And sometimes, like, the tulip will have a slightly different hue. But, it would be very difficult to be like, this is red versus this is pink. Or, this is a blue hyacinth versus a purple hyacinth.
Okay. And I don't know if this is putting you on the spot. You may not know. But why do tulips grow so well in the Netherlands? Or how did that... Do you know how that happened? Or what it is about the Netherlands that they became a tulip?
I don't. I think maybe just a very suitable climate for it and good soils.
Okay. I didn't know if there's a reason they're like grown so well there, or if that's...
Yeah, Netherlands is so famous for it. You always see the photos online of all the tulips in the Netherlands. It's interesting.
It might be something about the cool summers, because I guess out in the Pacific Northwest there are some growers there that have huge fields of bulbs, and it's always quite a thing to see. I know I've got a pilot friend who takes the time to go flying over them. So
very cool.
That's amazing.
It's fortunate you can do that, but not everybody can. Anyway, I suspect it's a climate thing.
I mean, which makes sense. And obviously plants come from everywhere and they have to start somewhere, but I didn't know if there was something specific.
That's very cool. If I'd say so myself, I think our gardens around here rival that in the Netherlands. Never been to the Netherlands myself, but I do love our gardens around here.
So I have one more question for you guys before I think we'll do trivia, unless you have something else you want to add. But animal people kind of roll their eyes at us or don't want to answer when we ask what their favorite animal is. But I would like to know what your favorite animal is, and then if you have a favorite plant. And is that hard?
So
do you feel
tricky.
do you feel guilty if you say, "Well, this is my favorite plant"? Like some people will be like, "I can't tell you a favorite animal."
It's like picking between your children or something.
So maybe you guys
I
can answer the animal one.
I think the red pandas are terribly cute.
Oh, they are
great.
terribly
I love the red pandas.
Great answer.
I have to say I was going to say red panda. Too.
Oh my God! Pull the rug out from under you.
But we can have the same favorite. It's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough cuteness to go around.
Okay, so we have red panda fans. And then do you have a favorite plant? Can we ask you that?
It's really hard. Because of my connection to the desert, and then also traveling around, I would go with prickly pear cacti.
Okay.
Which is not many people's favorite plant.
No, I love it though.
But, it actually is in a lot of places in North America. So it travels around as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I do love cacti. But that's not, that's sort of an on-the-spot answer.
Sure, yeah. No, I like it though. You have a connection to it and a reason for it.
It's really hard to choose a favorite
Okay.
plant. There's so many great things out there.
I know. I feel hard pressed to choose a real favorite. I'm more of a what do I really dig right now? And hellebores right now are all so doggone pretty. Doggone. I love the hellebores, but that's a this time of year answer.
Okay.
I confess.
And what about them do you love? Just how they look? Is there something about them?
There's a big range of colors from whites to reds, and they're evergreen. They self-sow, but it's not an obnoxious amount, so you're never going to be short on hellebores.
Okay.
And the pollinators seem to enjoy them a great deal this time of year too. It's one of your earlier blooming perennials.
Okay.
So even if you don't have tulips blooming yet, you can still have pollinators coming by for that.
Which is important to all of us, and hopefully everyone listening too.
That's awesome. I can definitely relate to that, though. It depends on your favorite. Depends on the day, right?
It kind of does.
Well, great. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to touch on that we didn't talk about as far as like spring blooming plants or anything before we get into trivia? Anything about your jobs that you love or you wanted to touch on that we didn't? It's okay if the answer is no. We just want to give you a chance.
I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll see how much I can embarrass myself
ready
with
for
trivia
then?
today.
All right, obviously, guys, we're talking about tulips today. Jen and I learned on trivia with Mairead a few weeks ago that there are over 3,000 varieties of tulips, which completely blew my mind. So today, we're going to learn about some of the color symbolism behind some of these varieties.
Oh, boy.
So I'm going to here's how it's going to work.
Ooh.
Here's how I'm going to give you guys what the color symbolizes, and then you guys are going to have to guess what color it is, if that makes sense.
So I just have a few colors I need to know.
So yeah,
Yes,
we're
okay.
just guessing between colors here today. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Good? Alright. So first one, I'm starting you guys off with a softball here. What color symbolizes true love or romantic love?
Red.
Red.
Red. Alright,
Yay.
1 for 1 so far. Starting
Okay.
with an easy one. This one, I would not have guessed. Second up, what color symbolizes elegance or royalty?
Purple.
Yeah, purple.
Purple. Clearly. I need to learn
Royalty.
something about it. About tulips. About colors. I don't know. Yeah, what I read on this was apparently purple dye was very expensive, like in the 1700s. So purple just became the color royalty.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which, yeah, so the tulips have kind of carried that on. All right, next up. And if you guys are the experts here, so if you have anything to add to any of these, please, by all means, feel free to add something. But what color symbolizes good luck or uniqueness, a one-of-a-kind nature?
I'm guessing yellow.
Yellow from Jenna, okay?
Good luck or uniqueness.
Yes.
Oh. I kind of feel yellow, but I might teeter on white.
I could be swayed. I'm kind of thinking yellow too, but I don't. That's a guess. That's a guess.
So this is our first miss here. The answer is actually blue.
What?
Oh.
And
I,
this
was
is
not,
because
I was aiming yellow or white too.
Wow.
So.
Yeah.
apparently this is because, and like I said, if you guys have anything to add to this, but apparently the blue tulip is extremely rare.
I was
It's
gonna
a
say,
very
I didn't know there
rare
were blue
variety.
tulips.
Yeah.
Blue is a very uncommon color in plants in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Now I
Yeah.
want to look one up.
Yeah.
Have you ever had those here?
We have had blue varieties.
Okay.
Strangely, some of the blue ones, they just haven't done as well here. So we tend to only get maybe 1 or 2 a year to
Okay.
try out. And, it's possible, too, that some of our wildlife find them a little tastier because
Oh.
sometimes those beds definitely get a little more
Interesting.
activity in that way. But that is all just sort of a
Anecdotal. kind of,
observation
Speculation.
kind of thing. Yeah, speculation.
Wild
Well, they're
Speculation.
rare. They probably
Yeah.
have like special, unique
Yes.
qualities to them. The animals might like
tastes
more,
so
or-
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're extremely rare. They're very pretty, if I might add. Seeing photos of them. I'm going to have to look for them out in the gardens this year, see if I can find any. But next up, we got what color represents hope and happiness?
Well, I'm going to go to yellow
Is that
again.
yellow now?
Yellow seems joyful. Sun's
Yes.
out.
Yellow, we got it. Yeah,
Ah,
Perfect.
we got that one. This one was interesting to me, though, because apparently the yellow tulip, the symbolism behind it, has been rebranded over the last decade or so. Historically, it symbolized jealousy
Oh.
or a jealous love,
Wow.
which doesn't really match yellow to me, so it's been rebranded and now symbolizes hope and happiness. Which sounds a little more
I wonder
fitting
whose
to
job
me.
it is to brand these colors and tulips.
Pantone? Seems like they have a lot to say about colors.
Next up, alright, we're on good pace right now. We're 3 for 4, so you guys are in good shape. Fifth one, we have what color represents friendship or appreciation?
Do we have many left? I'm going to go with white.
I'm thinking pink.
Pink, that was, yeah. Do we have any
I
others?
was leaning pink.
Pink. We got a miss here. It's actually orange.
Orange.
Oh, I guess that
Orange, yeah.
friendship makes sense.
Orange represents friendship and appreciation. Last one I have for you guys today. I didn't even know this existed, but this color represents power and strength.
You didn't know the color existed?
I didn't know this color existed.
It's a really
I didn't know
unique
this,
color.
This color of tulip
Okay.
existed. But
Trying to think of what colors are left.
Right.
Power
and that
and
he might
strength.
not
We've
think
done
it's...
red, orange, yellow. Green's not really... Well, I mean, you can get a green tulip.
You can?
Well, it's white with a big green in the center of the petal.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds cool.
They are interesting.
Hmm.
Indigo, violet...
I feel like white's the only color left.
Sure, white.
white, it's actually the exact opposite of white. It's black.
Oh.
But the black tulip
yeah.
seems like it's a little bit of a myth because it's not technically black, is what I read. It's technically a shade of very, very dark purple
That
that,
makes
just
sense.
appears black
Negrita.
to us. But yeah, they're
Negrita is what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's one of... That's probably our darkest
That's a
right now.
purple. There's like
It's a dark-
some other darker ones
Yeah.
that are more on the
Ronaldo.
yeah.
We don't have that this year, but that was a nice dark... A red purple.
Mm-hmm.
Really like that one.
I want to look up pictures of tulips.
it's so fascinating seeing all the varieties. It's always really cool, but not bad. Thank you guys for being along with the bit here and taking part in trivia with us today.
Yeah.
3 out of
Sometimes
5.
he asks like history questions and they're just impossible. I have to guess like a year and I'm just
I thought about doing tulip history and I spared you on it.
Thank you. I can guess colors well enough.
Jenna, do we have anything else for him today?
Yes. So you guys can answer together or separately. I don't know how you want to do it, but I would like to know, what can I do as a person who wants to be a better steward of the earth? What is something you guys recommend?
Well, one thing that I would recommend is just planting more plants and more garden spaces. And, you know, if you're able to think about planting for wildlife when you do that, that's even better. So, you know, thinking about having bloom available for the full season or the full, you know, most of the year, and a diversity of plants, those are always really important concepts and important things to have when we talk about gardening for wildlife or supporting wildlife in the gardens.
Mine as a caveat to that is planting is good, I think. I would just recommend that make sure that whatever you're planting is not a problem for your immediate surroundings. So if your garden is near a natural area, park or preserve or something like that, maybe make sure that the plants you're putting in aren't going to escape out into that and be a problem.
Do you have any specific examples of what not to plant or that you suggest planting for people?
Given that we're talking about bulbs, I really like Eranthus, which is winter aconite. In masses, it's a wonderful carpet of yellow, but it's not something that, again, I would not plant that near a natural area because they can kind of get out and smother things that might be coming along, things that are supposed to be there, like the squirrel corn or spring beauties and so forth. Which, by the way, you unfortunately, I would advocate planting those, but those are hard to come by. Most of the time you find those, they have actually been harvested from the wild, unfortunately. They're very difficult to propagate, so buying some to plant in your garden is I would not do that because...
Which is so hard, yeah.
I know.
I've always had a hard time finding native plants, and you think that's the best to do, but then the ones that are available may not be the best.
Right. There are many other native plants that are available, and make sure when you find them that they have been propagated and not just simply harvested, lifted out of the wild, and doing the wildlife then no good there.
Right, yeah. Do you guys know, are there any places, specifically any nurseries or anywhere that you usually have good luck with native species or where people should be looking? Or,
Well,
like,
one,
you know, like, or
one
what
could
not to
always
to?
go to the native plant sales out at Boyer Farms.
Yes, yeah.
Scott, if he's listening to this, is already cursing me because I don't remember the dates for the sales.
They're
set.
online.
They're
Okay.
online.
Yeah.
Find them on
There
the
we
Zoo's
go.
website, and hopefully we can have Scott come in and talk to us about these native
There
plant
we go.
sales.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Awesome. Well, do you guys have anything else you want to add? Or any other suggestions you have?
Get out and enjoy the blooms.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yes.
Definitely
If
get
you
out and
have the
enjoy
chance, if you've never been to the zoo or If you've just never been to Tunes and Blooms, it's a really incredible event, and like I said, it's free, so it's a great time to come, especially if money is tight. And there's, food and drinks available, and obviously the beautiful blooms, and you can walk around the zoo and listen to music and enjoy them, but of course you can come during the day also.
Yeah, and that Tunes and Blooms, that's every Thursday during April.
Oh yes, good point.
So
I
yeah,
don't
every
think I brought that
Thursday
up.
during April. I think it starts right at close at 5 o'clock. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for you to come, especially if coming to the zoo can be hard. It is expensive to come here. So.
Or during the day, or you don't
Yeah.
want to come on the weekends when it's the most crowded. So
Yeah, it's a really cool event, really good opportunity to see the fruits of your labor, all your great work in the gardens. It's really pretty. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
well, thank you guys for being here and everything you do for the zoo and the botanical gardens. So we really appreciate it, and truly we really enjoy all of the gardens. It's so beautiful always.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you.
Of course.
Thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And to all you listening at home, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
Have a great day.